What's up, guys? Back for another video, and today I'm just taking a little bit of break from the performance stuff on the Maverick, and I'm going to do a little bit of wiring. I enjoy doing the wiring side of installs and stuff like that, and just thought I'd take a break from doing some of the other stuff and start working on the wiring and the switches and the gauges and stuff that I told you I'm going to be installing into the Maverick. So today what we're going to be doing is I'm going to be making a couple little pigtails to wire these switches, and what I'm going to be doing is actually called daisy chaining, and what that means is I'm going to be daisy chaining these two gauges together. I'm going to make a harness that is essentially going to link them together, and real easy to do, and it's a really good way of hooking up multiple switches without having just an absolute shit ton of wire. Me personally, there's nothing that drives me more crazy than seeing guys hooking up all this electrical stuff in their car or their truck or their side-by-side or whatever it is that they're working on, and they're showing you how they're wiring it all up, and there's just wires going everywhere and it looks like complete garbage, and then they wonder why they got shorts or why they're having problems, and then when they do go to work on it down the road, they can't locate things, and it's just not the way that I work. I like things to aesthetically look very nice and professional, and in the long run it actually makes your life a lot easier because you're able to know where everything is, what it's doing, and it just makes it a lot easier just all the way around. And then there's also some benefits to daisy chaining switches together, because basically all the switch is doing is it's a switch. It's turning on a particular thing that you have hooked up on your vehicle, and by daisy chaining you are sharing one power tap and one ground, and you're able to link all of the gauges together, and then they go to their appropriate relay, because when you're wiring things you want to use switches, you want to use relays, you want to draw your power from your battery, you want to have it wired a specific way to get the maximum amount of voltage without a high amp draw, because when you're dealing with 12-volt systems and you're overworking circuits, it's really easy to get a big amp draw and burn up wires, and it shortens the life on the thing you're powering, and there's just a lot of things that can go on. So it's important to really do it properly. So in this video, for what we're doing right now, is I'm just going to be making the little pigtail harness to then run it to the power and stuff in a future video. So basically what we're going to be doing is we're going to run a wire that goes from one switch to the other switch, which then would go out to the ground or the power supply or whatever it may be. And I'll explain it after we make the pigtails what wire does what, but for right now it's just more of an instructional video on how to do it properly, and at least the way I do it and the way I feel that it needs to be done. And I'm also going to go over what you need in order to do this. For what we're doing with it being just a 12-volt system, we just need red and black wire. You're going to need a couple feet. Actually, you can, a couple feet just for what we're doing, and then you're going to need your wire. You're going to need your female speed connectors. You're going to need your crimpers, or like I like to call them, knuckle poppers. And I like using heat shrink tubing for all your connections. It looks better, and it helps keep water and mud and all that different type of stuff out, and it gives it a lot better of more of a factory look. And then I'm also going to be using my butane torch that I showed you on the other video. I gave you a little bit of a write-up on that. So that's pretty much what we're going to be doing on here. So let me get a couple things together, and then we'll start making some pigtails. So what I'm going to do first and foremost is cut me a few sections of wire. And for my particular setup, with it only being 2 switches and the switches are really close together, your jumper is only going to need, you got maybe 4 to 5 inches. So if you want to pre-cut for what you're doing, obviously the quantity that I'm about to give you is going to change for your particular setup, but for what I'm doing with my 2 switches right here, I'm going to need 2 short jumper wires, 1 red and 1 black. I would say probably about 5 inches long each, give or take. These are just rough estimates. It doesn't have to be perfect. The closer it is, the better it is, and the better it looks, I feel. That's just my opinion. And then you're going to need 1 black wire, which is your ground wire. That would be the longer one. I would make that one probably about 1 foot long, just because you don't know where you're going to tap in or how far you're going to go. So you're going to need a ground wire about 1 foot long, and then you need your incoming and your outgoing power for the switch. So those, I would make those just to give you a little bit of room to do your wiring. Make those about 1 foot long also each. Then you got your all your jumpers and everything. Alright, so I went ahead and I cut all the wiring that I'm going to need for what I'm doing here. And I always like to pre-cut everything and kind of lay everything out, and just have everything kind of as organized as possible, almost like an assembly line type of setup, just because I think it goes smoother. I think it turns out a little bit better. You get done faster, and this also kind of helps you know whether or not you're going to be short something or you're missing something, and it also kind of helps you to keep from forgetting some stuff. So that's just my opinion on that, and that's the way I do it, and that's the way I like to do it. Real quick, just to kind of show you what we're going to be doing here. On the switch panel, like I said, I'm going to be creating a couple pigtails and daisy chaining these switches together. And the way that's going to work is, just so you can see as far as from the wiring standpoint before I start making these little pigtails, is basically what we're going to be doing is on these top terminals, you've got this one, this one, this one, this one. These are your ground terminals. And basically what you would do is, if you were only using 1 switch, if you only had 1 switch like this left switch, you would go from this terminal to this terminal with a jumper to your chassis ground or your battery negative. It's just whatever you choose. So what we're going to be doing, and then on your positive, you've got your incoming power gets jumped down to here to this lower right terminal, which is your illumination, and then this is your outgoing power to your device or your light or whatever it is that you're powering. So you've got incoming power, jumps down to illumination. Those are doubled together, jump together. That illuminates the switch, and then this is your outgoing power. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be running a jumper from here to here. Then we're going to be running another wire from here to here. Another jumper from here to chassis ground. Now this is essentially going to be one continuous wire. There's going to be connections. You're going to have a spade connector here, spade connector here, here, and here, and then to your chassis ground. So jump, 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 ground. and that's the way it's going to be. And I know that seems like a lot of work, but when it's done aesthetically, it looks really nice. It's very easy to organize, know where your wires are going, and if this switch ever fails, you're taking off 5 fittings or five connectors and popping the switch out, popping a new one in, and you're back up and running. And then the other thing also by doing this is, if for some reason this switch fails, by daisy chaining, you will not take out this switch. This switch will still be operational even if this switch is broken. So for me, the two switches I'm using here is, I have a rooftop LED light bar, and then I also have rear lights, reverse lights, rear lights, you know, just whatever you want to use them for, and I want those on a switch also. And then as far as my gauges, I already went over this, but I'm going to have a boost gauge and I'm going to have an oil pressure gauge. I think those are, for my application, I mean, boost is, I have to know what my boost is. There's no way around that. That's the only way you can accurately tune and know that you're not going to damage your motor when you're making big power levels like what I plan on making. So when you're talking 16 pounds of boost, which is basically right at the threshold of what a stock turbo will make, but when you're making that kind of boost, you need to know that you're not running anything higher than that or less than that because of the tuning and everything like that. So I have to have a boost gauge. Oil pressure is just, I mean, it's kind of, you have a factory water temp and you don't have any idea of what your oil pressure is. When you've got a turbo machine and you're out beating the hell out of it, you need to know if you're losing oil pressure or if your oil pressure is low for whatever it might be. So those are my two big gauges that I think are first and foremost. And then also you want to have a belt temp gauge when you're running big power and you're out and you're beating on it and you're racing and doing whatever it might be. Belt temp is another very, very important gauge, simply because it's very easy when you're making the kind of power levels that these machines are capable of making. You go out there and you start it up and you've got a cold belt and you stab on the throttle, you're going to blow that belt up into a million pieces. They got that kind of power, they'll shred a belt instantly. So you need to heat it up before you beat on it, and then you need to monitor that temperature on that belt. So we'll get into that at a later time, but for right now, these are the two gauges that I'm starting off with, and I just wanted to show you that. So next thing we're going to be doing is starting to make this these pigtails. And like I said, you've got your two jumpers, and then you've got your ground to chassis or the battery. And I'm just running little, you know, I'm calling these are called pigtails for a reason, because they're just short sections of wire, and then you tap into them and then you run to your battery or you run to your accessory and you go to all the different stuff. So this is simply a way of, and I'm also going to be using some plugs along with this as well. So that way, if I ever need to pull this assembly out, it's a matter of undoing a couple screws, unplugging it, and I can have this thing out really, really quick, because the power for the gauges is also connectors as well. So this can be removed really, really fast, and that's always nice for when you're doing this type of stuff. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to start splicing some wires. So yeah, like I said, we got to start stripping some wires. Another tool actually I wanted to show you that I have, I forgot about these, I just bought these, and these are Matco, and these are wire strippers. These are really, really nice. They're really, really fast. When you got a lot of wires to strip, these come in handy, because you just kind of put them in the jaw and they grab, and then you squeeze, and that's it. I mean, you get a perfect splice every time, and they have a nice little gauge on there, so you can get everything uniform. I mean, you can use, there's a million different ways to splice wire. I mean, back in the day, I used to use a cigarette lighter, heat it up with a little bit of fire and pull it off, burn your fingertip. But after doing that several hundred times, you kind of get tired of doing that. But you got these, and you've got, you know, you can use, these are a stripper, cutter, and a crimper all in one. And and then and they've got other ones as well. So I mean, take your choice on what you want to use. Anything will work, but for the money, I really like these a lot, and they make the job a lot faster and a lot easier. And like I said, you can kind of go and get a uniform. Now they have metric on one side and they have standard on the other side as far as for measurement. I'm left-handed, so I'm looking at the metric side, so I'm doing 10 millimeter, which I'm going to say is going to be right around 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to strip all this stuff first. That way I can just be done with the strippers. And you want to make sure you strip enough. Don't worry about, and you don't want to strip too much, but you don't want to do not enough, because when you put these in and you put your spade connector on there to crimp it, you've got to make sure that you've got a good amount of exposed wire, or otherwise you risk crimping down onto a piece of wire with a spade connector or a connector and then not getting a good connection. So don't get in a hurry and not take enough off. I have seen a lot of guys that they think if they overstrip they're gonna cause a problem, and you don't want to do an inch and have it's just gonna look like crap. But I like to strip them all off in advance. I like to roll the wire. A lot of guys will tin the wire. You can do that with a soldering iron, and I have the ability to do that, but I'm not going to do that for this. I don't think it's necessary. I'm going to, like I said, roll the wires. And the reason I'm rolling the wires is because then when you crimp down, you're getting a better bite. If these wires aren't rolled and then you crimp your connection on here, it's going to just crush the wire, and then that connector could actually fall off. So by rolling these tips, rolling the tips of these wires, it gives it a little bit better strength, and you don't have to worry about the spade connector falling off. So I'll go ahead and do all those. And then, like I said, now you're going to need your spade connectors, your crimpers, and I'm also using some heat shrink tubing on here as well. I'm trying to make this look as nice as possible, just because I've invested a lot of time and a lot of money into this, and when it comes to the finer details, I'm a big proponent on attention to detail. I think these little things can really make or break a build, and it can also save you a lot of trouble. Like I said, doing it this way, if I ever have problems with any of my lights or anything like that, it's going to be a lot easier for me to diagnose that problem. So really, by me thinking ahead and doing a better job, I'm actually saving myself potential trouble down the road. And this is basic stuff. I mean, this is wiring 101, guys. You're in school or whatever. I'm not teaching you or showing you anything that any good teacher or any professional or any enthusiast, whatever, anybody that does this stuff in any capacity should be doing it like this. If you're out there stripping wires and you're twisting them together and you're using electrical tape and you're calling it good, that's hillbilly and that's redneck and that's back road, backwoods garbage, and you deserve what you get as far as your crap not working and your stereo sounding like crap and whatever. That's the type of work you're going to do. You get what you put in. You get out what you put in. So if you put in a half-assed effort, you're going to get a half-assed performance, and it's not going to be what you want it to be. So, not to get on a tangent, but it just bothers me when guys got really nice stuff and they don't do a good job, because they're really just hurting themselves in the long run, And if you're a guy that's doing this and you expect to get paid for this and charge people, then you should be doing the best possible work you can, because that's your name and that's your reputation out there, guys. So if you own a shop of any sort, you should be doing it and doing it properly. So now that we've got the wires stripped, we're going to go ahead and we're going to start putting on some of these connectors and making this loop or pigtail. So like I said, we're going to go terminal to terminal, terminal over to this switch, then to this terminal, and then that goes out to chassis ground or battery negative. So this first one is going to go here. Put your connector on. Crimp your wire. Give it a good tug. And like I said, I'm going to use heat shrink. So I'm going to slide this over. I didn't forget. I just didn't want to put it on first because then I didn't want to have to worry about it falling off. And you don't need to use the heat shrink. You could leave it off. I think it looks nice. And if I had them, they actually make connectors like this that have the heat shrink built on, and they come with a special glue inside there. So when you heat it, after you crimp it, you heat it up, it shrinks down, and then the glue acts as a sealant to make it watertight, which are actually even better, much better than what I'm doing. So if you can come across those or you get them, that's really the way to go, especially on side-by-sides where you're exposing it to water and mud, and you're going to be power washing it and cleaning it and detailing it. Hopefully after you take it out and you get it dirty, those are really the way to go. And you can get those online. I'm an eBay guy. A lot of guys like Amazon, but you can get them either one. You can get them locally like Napa, a lot of the higher end auto parts stores that are more of like where they do accounts and they do like delivery and stuff like that. Any of your trucking company supply places would sell them as well. So you can get them a million different places. But yeah, so those are something to look into as well. So now this next one, because this is going to go here and then jump over, we're actually going to be doing 2 wires on this one. So this is the one that's going to get a little bit tricky. You're going to want to put your heat shrink on because you can't put it on after, simply because you've got 2 wires and all that. It would be, this heat shrink will not go over the spade connector. So put that up over the wire. Make sure you got no stragglers. And you're going to want to kind of twist those together. And like I said, you really want to make sure you got these connectors, this wire pushed down all the way, because if you don't crimp it enough, or if you don't splice it enough and then you go to crimp it, these wires are going to fall off. So hopefully I crimped this, or I stripped this one enough to not have an issue, especially when you got 2 wires. So tug it. We got a good nice connection, and then that's that. And then this is going to be, we're going to do this again, but now this one, the last wire, is we got another short one we got to do, so we got to do a double one. So go ahead, twist your wires together, heat shrink tubing, spade connector. Now you're going to want, like I said, make sure, with the me doing 2 wires into 1 connector, you got to use a little bit of force there to get that in, because it's a tight fit. And if you just kind of lightly push on it, you think it's in there and it's not. So you want to make sure you use a little bit of effort when you're doing that. Give Get your heat shrink on. Now the next one is it's a double again, but then this goes to this last terminal right here, and then it goes to your chassis ground, or like I said, your battery negative. So go ahead and get your wire in there. Make sure it's in all the way. Crimp it. Give it a tug. And there you go. We just made a pigtail. Now I'm going to go ahead and heat shrink this, and then we'll go ahead and put it on the switch so you can see what it looks like. Alright, got the torch going, and now when you're doing this, it's kind of hard to get the camera just right. I'm in a little tight area here working, but not a lot of heat to this. You don't want to burn the heat shrink tubing. What you want to do is you want to heat it and make it shrink. I mean, that's why it's called heat shrink tubing, right? So go around and nice and gradual. Keep it away from it, and there you go. Not burnt. Turns out great. This torch is awesome. This is why I bought it. It was a lot of money. I think I paid 150 bucks for this or something like that. But for me and what I'm doing, and the quality of work that I'm trying to put out. Sorry, I know I keep on going out of camera. Sorry, guys. But yeah, it's worth the money, guys. You know, and you can get these. I mean, even you go to Home Depot or whatever, they sell them too. And it's probably actually, I know Matco doesn't make this, but I try to just be loyal to my Matco guy. Anybody that deals with Matco, and I'm sure Snap-on does it the same thing. You know, you got your account, you got your truck account and all that, and they let you pay X amount of dollars per week or whatever. They sucker you in, you know, they want you to get that new toolbox, you know, that $20,000 toolbox, $20 a week for the next 20 years or whatever it is. But you know, so it says a lot when those guys, you know, that's how they make their living. So I just try to support my guy, and he takes care of me too. So we got the pigtail all done. I'm going to go ahead and install this just so you can see what it looks like. And these are really, really easy to make. And the finished product looks really good. And I mean, there you go. Proper spade connectors, proper gauge wire, heat shrinked, relatively close in measurements. You know, I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect. If you know, I mean, I like it to get as close as possible, but at the same time, I'm not going to sit here and measure stuff out with a ruler or a tape measure. I mean, I just try to eyeball it. But this was start to finish. I mean, this is like a 15-20 minute deal. And I mean, it's worth the time. So let me go ahead and get the positive set up, and then we'll go ahead and we'll do a little bit more wiring. All right, so we're back to do some more wiring. Do the positive side of the pigtail now, and got a lot more stuff here to do. So a lot of doubles, pretty much every one other than the two power taps. The two outs are double, meaning two wires into one spade connector. So we've got our power wire coming in from our power supply, and then we've got our wire going out. I said you want to make sure you get that in there really good. I went ahead and actually spliced these positives a little bit more, just because I was worried about those ground wires not grabbing good. So gotta get your don't forget about your heat shrink. Slide it down. Now, one thing you want to remember when you're doing heat shrink tubing is you don't want to have it. You want to get as small of tubing as you can that will fit over what you're working. Heat shrink tubing, you know, it'll only dry and it'll only shrink so much, and then you're going to get to a point where it'll just start burning and it won't do it anymore. So kind of know what you're doing as far as like what gauge wire and what you're going over and stuff like that, and make sure you buy the appropriate tubing for what you're doing, and it'll work a lot better and it'll look a lot better, and it'll just make your life a whole lot easier. You know, I keep on reminding you guys to not forget the heat shrink tubing, and I just almost forgot it. So in there all the way. Good, nice tight fit. And this is going along real nice. And once you get the system down, you know, you can really knock this stuff out. I mean, it's not hard. It's a little bit tedious and it's a little bit time consuming, but the outcome is well worth the effort, in my opinion. You know, like I said, I could have just crimped down a bunch of wires and electrical taped this up and all that and been done. And at the end of the day, what would I have had? I just would have had a bunch of crimped wires that were electrical taped and nothing to really be proud of or brag about or anything like that. You know, so the effort is rewarded, in my opinion. So we got trying to get this last fitting done before my battery dies. So tubing, spade connector. done. Oh, battery's gonna die. Be right back. Alright, so we're back. I'll tell you, those GoPro batteries, they always die at the worst possible moment. So yeah, we're back. Now all the connections are crimped and we have all the heat shrink tubing in place. Now we just gotta heat this all up, just like we did before with the ground wire. Like I said, you do not want to heat this stuff up too much. It probably looks like I'm getting the flame directly on this, but I'm staying away because this torch will burn this stuff almost on contact. The other thing you have to remember is when you heat shrink this tubing, you're heating it up, it continues to tighten even after you pull the heat away because the wire's hot, the tubing's hot. So you want to give it a little bit of a break, give it some time to continue to do what it's meant to do. People have a tendency to keep the flame on there because it's not drawn in tight enough at the beginning and they think it's not going to work, and then they end up overheating it and then you damage it. So there, this is another pigtail done, and very easy. And now we'll go ahead and we'll install it like we did the ground. You guys want to be careful when you're hooking up switches and stuff like that, and you're pushing on these connectors. And you want to make sure you have a nice snug fit, but you don't need to use a whole lot of force to put these together. As long as you don't have a bent connector or whatever, I mean, they should go on nice and tight. Now that's what that looks like, and then you have two more wires, which I went ahead and already made these. I didn't put the heat shrink tubing on, I forgot. So I'm just going to go ahead and install them for you, show you what they look like, and then I'll come back and heat shrink tube them, just so I can show you what everything's going to look like finished. So there you go. Now basically, to recap, you've got your trigger wire. This is your incoming power wire. This comes from a keyed switch normally. You don't want, unless you want to have these, I mean, you could have these where they're hot wired, and that would basically mean this is going right directly to your battery. But then you leave the potential to being able to leave things on and kill your battery. So I always like to have things like this on a switched power. Switched power means when you turn your key on, these then become hot, and then you can energize the particular thing that you're running. So this is going to be going to your fuse panel, and it's going to be on a wire that when you turn your key on becomes hot. So you've got your incoming power, illumination, jumped over incoming power to illumination, out to accessory number 1, out to accessory number 2. In my case, these two wires, one is going to go to my rooftop LEDs, and the other one is going to go to my reverse lights or my rear lights. These also, like I said, these are illuminated, so when I turn my key on, even when they're turned off, they're going to be illuminated. and then when you turn them on, then this portion becomes illuminated, letting you know that the accessory is turned on. So it's a dual illumination. These are really, really nice, and you can find them on eBay, and you'll be real happy. These are marine grade. These are waterproof. They have a rating. I think it's an IP67. What does that mean? I have absolutely no clue, but it said it in the ad, so I'm assuming that means that they're waterproof up to a certain amount of depth and all that good stuff. So yep, so here it is. And like I said, these are pigtails, and this is 2 switches daisy chained together. So hopefully you like this, and it was helpful. And in the future, if you guys are ever going to do any wiring and stuff like that, you can use this as a reference. And like I always say, please like and subscribe and comment. Suggestions, criticism, whatever it might be. I would rather it be positive. You know, I mean, if you want to tell me, you know, negative stuff, I mean, like I said before, you can just take it somewhere else with you. I'm really not here to listen to that. But I mean, if you have suggestions and things like that, or if you have something that you're working on and you would like me to do a video or explain something that you're working on, please, you know, comment below and tell me, hey, I'm doing this, you know, could you do a video on that? And I'd be more than happy to do that. And this, like I said, this was just because I had some spare time tonight. I wanted to do this video and show how to do this and daisy chain some switches together. And I'm going to go more into this because we still have to hook up the light. We have to tap into a switched power. I'm going to show you how to hook up relays and really get into all that stuff. So we got a lot of stuff in the near future. And I'm just kind of going off in different directions just because the bolt-on stuff and the actual wrench turning stuff gets old after a little bit, so I like to mix it up and show some different things. So hopefully you enjoyed this, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks again.